Alrighty, greetings and salutations everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff and welcome to our Thursday night live stream for week 11 of the 2024 fantasy football season. If you're someone like me and you just spent the last 3 hours watching the most dysfunctional football game, perhaps one of the most boring Thursday night football games of the season, welcome, you are not alone. Again, besides the terrible play calling, the coaching, I'm telling you, that was malpractice at the end of that game. The Washington Commanders, I don't even understand it. We'll talk about it in just a moment. But not only were the Washington Commanders bad, the way that they wanted to execute that fourth down, the way they wanted to execute the 2-minute drill, what a disaster. But hey, you're not alone. For those of you who are here, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. That may be one of the most interesting games that I've seen in quite some time. For those of you who had Saquon Barkley, congratulations. For those of you who had any other piece in that game, perhaps, Zach Ertz had himself some heroics at the end of that game. Outside of those two pieces, we are in shambles thus far beginning the week. Very much so on the opposite side of the coin in comparison to where we were this time last week, where many of us had Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and all those efforts. This week, yeah, not looking great. But here, for the next hour plus, we're answering any and all fantasy football questions, whether you send it in via the live chat or via super chat. Make sure you include your scoring format. That is greatly appreciated. Standard, half PPR, full PPR, it doesn't matter. As long as you give me the context in regards to that, we're good to go. All right, let's get into answering questions, shall we? And then I'll go ahead and crash out in just a moment complaining about the malpractice that is the Washington Commanders play calling. I just do not understand it, but we'll get to that in a second. Santino starts us off with the first question of the day. Thank you very much, Santino. Says, who would you start as your two wide receivers? I have Flowers, Tillman, Jennings, and DJ Moore. I already have Hall, Walker as my running backs and Hunt within the flex. Okay, cool. So I believe, Santino, your running backs and flex, good to go. I would not change any of those. Now, as for which wide receivers I would be starting this week, I feel at this point, I feel most confident rolling with Flowers and Tillman based on their recent production and opportunity share within their own offenses. DJ Moore is someone that is on my do not play until further notice list at this current moment. Jennings, again, is a pretty solid play, not only because of the opportunity share he saw last week. He had more targets than, of course, Kittle and Debo combined, but he also has a great matchup against Seattle. But what Tillman has been doing as of late and what Flowers will probably have to do in order for this team to succeed, I think is a little bit safer in this circumstance. So I'll lean in those two directions. But if you wanted to play Jennings, I wouldn't say that it's a terrible idea. I just feel like I don't prefer it in comparison to the alternatives that you have available. Thank you. Kate sends in a question, says questions in the chat. Thank you. No problem. Let me see if I can find it in the live chat right now. Let me travel on over there really quickly. Again, if you guys are going to type a question in the chat, make sure that it includes a scoring format. That's greatly appreciated. Okay. So Kate says, Irving is on the waiver. Looking at rest of season, would you suggest dropping someone to pick him up? Absolutely, yeah. Rest of my team consists of Burrow, Mixon, Swift, Brown, Hubbard, Pacheco, Chase, Reed, Sutton, Tillman, Hawkinson, Moody. Okay, so, we can go about this many of different ways. I do believe Bucky needs to be rostered. Is your team stacked? Absolutely. Okay, so with what you have as it stands, Burrow, Hawkinson. Okay, so here's the issue that I can potentially foresee in your situation here, Kate, going forward. Eventually, Burrow's going to have a bye week, and then you're probably going to have to drop somebody else in order to go pick up and backup quarterback. But as of right now, if I'm looking into the long term, I probably, assuming Brown is Chase Brown, I think I drop Swift or Hubbard in order to, that's one of the two that probably get dropped in this circumstance. In terms of long-term rest of season value, I'd rather have Bucky Irving over Swift or Hubbard. Now, if you're playing in a smaller league, potentially 8 teams, 6 teams, and you can't trade these players away before picking them up, before picking up Bucky, then you just go ahead and you outright do it. As for who I would be dropping in this circumstance, it'd probably be Swift. But in the long term, for right now, yes, I think he is more valuable than Swift rest of season once he comes back from the bye week. Considering you don't need him this week, obviously it helps in your scenario, but additionally, you're going to need to pick up somebody else for Burrow. So that'll then, when that road needs to be, treaded, we'll talk about that at that time. But as of right now, yes, either Hubbard or Swift take the axe in order to pick up Bucky Irving for rest of season. Thank you. That's a tough decision to make, though. I see why you would potentially struggle on that. All right, Xavier sends in a question. Thank you, Xavier. Xavier says, traded CeeDee Lamb and Ridley for Puka and Adams. Okay, CeeDee Lamb and Ridley. I don't know how you did it. I'd say, firm handshake, Xavier. Congratulations. That is an absolute victory in your circumstance. Again, you got to remember, Dak Prescott's out for the season. So CeeDee Lamb's overall value is capped. Additionally, Will Levis associated with Ridley, not too interested in that. Yes, I would much rather have Puka and Adams the rest of the season. Quite frankly, I may have just accepted that trade, just getting Puka in return, much less the addition of Adams would make it that much easier for you to accept that. Now, as for your next question, also, should I try to trade Debo or Reed for rest of the season? I'm comfortable having both of them on roster. Again, if you can potentially get back somebody like a Mike Evans, I'd be willing to, potentially trade that, but as of right now, based on the wide receivers you currently have on roster, again, Adams is going to have an upcoming bye week, so you might need to keep these players on your team instead of giving away like a 2-for-1 or anything like that. So I think keeping the depth is probably in your best interest, so I just hold. Thank you. All right, No Love Matt sends in a question. Thank you, Matt. Matt says, pick 2 out of these 4 for wide receiver 1 and 2. We have BTJ, Waddle, Tillman, Mike Williams in a full PPR. Cool. Of those available, as of right now, I'm probably leaning towards playing Tillman first, and then Waddle second, BTJ third, and Mike Williams fourth. That's the order in which I would, progress between those wide receivers. If Mike Williams had been with the team another additional week, I'd feel comfortable. But considering, again, he doesn't know the offense, to a full extent, and he's not going to play more than maybe 50% of the snaps this upcoming week, I just can't trust him, even in a great matchup. So Tillman number 1, Waddle 2, BTJ 3, Mike Williams 4. No Love Matt. Thank you. Nathan Salazar sends in a question. Thank you, Nathan. Full PPR trade Hall for Connor, playoff bound. Yeah, I would. Absolutely. Again, when I'm looking at that schedule for James Conner, weeks 15, 16, 17, it seems like it is going to be, the year that Connor brings home championships. As if he hasn't done it in the past. He's done it in the past. The first season he got to Arizona was a year where he had like 15 rushing touchdowns, 800 yards. Like that was another one of those years where he, of course, delivered. But yes, I would make the move. John War sends in a question. What's up, John? John says, full PPR, would you drop Dowdle or Juju? I'd rather drop Juju Smith-Schuster rather than Dowdle. Having running backs on roster, again, is relatively rare. When you take into account, again, there aren't very many, running backs in the league that are consistent, much less have a 3-down workload of opportunity. I think dropping someone like Dowdle would be a mistake, especially with, again, there haven't been, really... Juju Smith's the last 4 weeks here. There haven't been very many kind of moves within this backfield of the Dallas Cowboys, which makes me think, I can't trust Dowdle. He's still getting himself ample opportunity. What did he have, 15 touches this most recent Sunday? I know that he didn't get himself into the end zone, but at least the touches are there, which I think is more valuable in this circumstance going forward. All right, Peyton Whitaker sends in a question, says, I'm going to drop Devontae Smith. Okay, very well. Listen, that is your prerogative, brother. I wouldn't be able to suggest that, but I understand the pain. I understand it. Again, I said it on a wide receiver video on Wednesday, right? They don't play him in the slot anymore. Therefore, they never throw him the ball anymore. And it happened again. They're giving him bubble screens. That's it. Devontae Smith, a guy that is more than capable of 8 touchdowns and 1,000 yards within a year, is catching bubble screens 3 times a game, and that's it. Listen, at least you didn't have Terry McLaurin today. Let's just put it that way. Okay, let's see here. Also, Kraft Mac over Pitts. Kraft Mac over Pitts. When you say Mac, I don't know who you're referencing to there. Yeah. So Kraft over Pitts in a half PPR, sure. In a full PPR, I'd rather have Pitts. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Moving on to the next question sent in. Let me go ahead. Let's scroll back up here. I think it was Godwin sends in a question, says, more upside, Najee Harris or ETN? For this week, I would say it's ETN, especially if, in fact, we're getting into a situation in which Tank Bigsby does not play. He did not practice earlier today, nor did he practice yesterday. So ETN would have the more upside within this scenario. We had Brian Colorado and Abdullah sending questions, and Raghav, nothing attached to them. So let's go ahead. Let me write these names down just so I can reference them and then find them in the live chat in just a moment. So let's go ahead and travel over to the live chat. Control F, Brian Colorado. Brian says, PPR Superflex, have DK Metcalf, Chase, Devontae Smith, Keon Coleman, Kyron, Montgomery, Jacobs, Rico. Okay, so that's the first question, or first message. Second question, or message question. PPR Superflex, I'm 8-2. I have DK, okay. Rico, Josh Jacobs, Montgomery. I traded Devontae Smith and Rico for Zay. Thoughts? I don't have an issue with that at all. Same manager is offering Breece Hall. What is a fair offer to make in that trade? Look, if they want to get rid of Breece Hall, I'd be happy to give them Montgomery. Otherwise, nothing. That's it. You've given away Rico, so you have no other running back depth. So they would need a running back and you would need a running back in return. So again, the only thing I'd be willing to potentially break off in that scenario is 1-for-1. They can have Montgomery. They can take it or leave it. Thank you. All right, moving on to Abdullah's question. Let's see if I can find it. All right. Let's see here. Where's Abdullah? There it is. Hi, Andrew. How are you? I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well as well, Abdullah. Let's see here. Should I trade away Tyreek Hill? I need a win out to secure the playoff spot. Could close one of the... I have Tyreek Hill, Tillman, BTJ, Marvin Harrison Jr., full PPR. Running backs are great. Okay. So at this current moment, looking at your team as a whole, yeah, I mean, look, if you need a win out in order to make sure that you secure a playoff spot, then I'm trading away BTJ, I'm trading away Tyreek, I'm trading away Marvin Harrison, I'm trading away everyone that isn't playing this week for you, or even if they're playing, they're not in great matchups. So McBride probably has to move unless you have a great backup tight end, but yes, I am trading these pieces. If you can get anything back in return that is higher ranked within my rankings at wide receiver this week, then you should go ahead and potentially explore that possibility. And if you can, get them on roster and hopefully get yourself a victory this week so you can continue on. And specifically, we're obviously trying to trade for players that do not have an upcoming bye week as well. Avoiding that would be of the utmost of importance. Thank you. Moving on to Lamosity, who sends in a question, says, let's go Saquon. I mean, that's it. No one else. Just Saquon. That's the only player that played well today. All things considered, I guess if you're playing in a full PPR, you may have been bailed out by like 5 catches, 60 yards from A.J. Brown, but those aren't typical A.J. Brown numbers. But, that's what the Philadelphia Eagles look like as of late. Anyway, for your question, Lamosity, you say you're in a half PPR 7-3. Should you trade Harrison Jr. and Stevenson for DK Metcalf and Javonte Williams? No, absolutely not. As of right now, Javonte Williams is a non-starter. He's actually someone that I have said on multiple occasions over the course of this week thus far. Since the most recent Sunday where the Denver Broncos took on the Chiefs, I have been of the opinion that Javonte Williams is a drop. He's not someone I want on roster, and going forward, I have no value in him. So as of right now, Harrison and Stevenson would be the preferred keep. Now, as for your next overall section of your question, Saquon, Jacobs at running back, Chase Hill, Harrison at wide receiver. Yeah, so as of right now, you're keeping what you have going forward. Lamosity, thank you. Let's see here. We had a question from Easy E. Says questions in the chat. All right, Easy, thank you. I appreciate it. Easy E says, I traded Mixon for Connor. Nope, don't like that. Don't like that at all. I don't know if that's a question more than a statement, but I would rather have had Mixon rest of the season. I understand the idea of potentially just specifically playing matchups, but the way that Mixon is played regardless of matchup leads me in his favor for rest of season value. Thank you. Moving on to a question from Raghav, who says this is a 2-part question. Raghav, where is part 1 though? That's the question here. There it is. Part 1, 10-team full PPR. I'm currently 5-5, top 4 playoffs. Okay, currently in 5th. Interesting. My team is quarterback, love Goff, but planning to pick up Wilson, understood. Achane, Jacobs, Connor, Tracy, ETN. Wide receivers are Jamar, Debo, Kupp, Dobbs, Kittle, and Ingram. Okay. And then your second part of your question, scroll down a little bit here, is playing against the 10th place team this week, but I have a tough matchup in week 12. Any changes, especially with Jamar Chase bye? I mean, look, at this point, if you're going to trade away Jamar Chase in any sort of circumstance in order to avoid his bye week, you have to trade him for a top 3 running back. So unless you're going to get back a Justin Jefferson or a Nico Collins, I don't think anybody else is worth it in that circumstance. So you might have to just sit on your hands or potentially trade him now prior to his bye week because it may be difficult to accomplish that next week. But in your situation, considering you're 5th, I mean, again, chances are you probably won't be able to get a trade-off. And you'll just have to hope for Debo and Kupp, next week in the absence of Jamar Chase to be able to carry your team. And I think they will be able to do so. I wouldn't worry about it too much in that circumstance. So as of right now, I think you're fine. You have a really strong roster across the board. Let's just hope that everything kind of falls in the right direction and you're able to catch these victories when you need to and hopefully get one step closer to that 4th place position. But again, if next week really does look like a problem, you have to trade Jamar now and you have to trade him for, again, Jefferson. Actually, you can only trade him for Jefferson because Nico has an upcoming bye as well. Thank you. Moving on, Isaacus sends in a question. Says trade London and Tillman for Malik if I can. No, I would rather have London and Tillman rest of season. I understand the intrigue in potentially trading for Malik Neighbors because of the upcoming schedule, but as it currently stands, all the rumors that I'm hearing is that Daniel Jones is most likely going to be benched, primarily because he has a $23.5 million injury guarantee that if in fact he was to miss time for the remainder of the season, going into next year, if they decided to cut him, they would still owe him that money. So in this current circumstance, I'm going to assume that they're going to probably play it safe, try to save some money. They're going to bench him, make sure he can't take advantage of the injury risk. And they're going to, start Drew Lock, which again, I don't believe is that much of an upgrade at all, if anything. So Malik Neighbors, not that much of a better option in comparison to those other two that you have on roster. So I'd keep London and Tillman as of right now. Thank you. Lock Screen Gaming sends in a question. Thank you very much. Says Daniels, Hall, Gibbs, Chase, Jennings, Njoku, Sutton, Texans defense, Vikings is the kicker. Texans kicker. So Kaimi Fairbairn is what you mentioned. Okay. Vikings defense benches Josh Downs, benches Josh Downs, Jacob. No, you mean Jacoby Myers. That's what it is. Okay, so you just forgot the I. I was about to say, I was like, what? Texans defense, any changes? I mean, look, Jaden Daniels kind of screwed you over to begin the week. As of any changes, yes, I would rather play Jacoby Myers over Jawan Jennings as of right now. That's the only change that I'd make going into this week. Thank you. All right, Reese sends in a question. Says, I need help deciding who to start at wide receiver in a full PPR. Going against Barkley, so you're in quite a bit of a hole here. So you have a running back, wide receiver, two. Oh, wow. That's a very interesting league. So you can play one running back, one wide receiver, and 3 flex. You have Henry, Kyron. Nope. You have Henry, Kenneth Walker. As soon as I saw KW, I thought Kyron Williams, but no, it's Kenneth Walker. Henry, Kenneth Walker, Hall, Hill, Amon-Ra, Debo, Pickens, Cup. Okay, so yeah, you've got a really strong team. As to the way that I would approach it, I'm playing Henry as your starting RB. Your starting wide receiver is going to be Pickens. Your starting 3 flex options are going to be in a full PPR scoring format. Amon-Ra, Debo, and Cup. So yeah, Henry, Pickens, Cup, Debo, Amon-Ra, Hill, and Kenneth Walker and Hall all benched. Thank you. Continuing on, we had a question from Dirk Doug, who sends in a question. Thank you very much, Dirk. Says, Muth or Gesicki? I'd only play Gesicki over Muth in the event in which we are in a situation where Higgins is inactive. That's the only time I would play Gesicki. Otherwise, it's Muth this week. Next question, J-Mo or Pearsall? I'd rather play Pearsall. Thank you. Unless, of course, let me retract that. I'd rather play Pearsall if Laporta is active. If Laporta is inactive, at that point, I'd play Jamison Williams. Thank you. All right, moving on to Peyton Whitaker, who had a follow-up. Says, also, Lions defense or Packers this week? Let me check my rankings from earlier today. Let me check my Patreon rankings. I'll tell you right now where I have them stacked up. So Packers defense is my number 3. Lions is my number 5. They're in 2 different tiers. I would prefer to play the Packers as of this week. Next question, Boswell or McManus? I currently have Boswell as my number 7 kicker and McManus as my number 13. So I'd go with Boswell there. And then your final thing was happy birthday. Thank you. I appreciate that, Peyton. Appreciate it. Mean the Bush sends in a question. Says, need a wide receiver. Trade Hall for Cup or Jacobs for DK. Hall for Cup or Jacobs for DK. As of right now, the preferred would be Hall for Cup because I prefer Cup over DK rest of the season, and I honestly prefer Jacobs over Hall. So, yeah, we will take the Cup trade. Thank you. Prohibit sends in a question. Says, traded Neighbors, Bucky for Connor and Achane. Yeah, congratulations. Firm handshake. Well done. That is a fantastic trade for you. Eric M sends in a question. Says, in a full PPR, I want to trade Aaron Jones and Kyler for Mixon and or Cook. Sorry, it's not and or. It's just or James Cook, which I'm not interested in. I'd rather probably have that duo. But anyway, let me see the context. You have Jalen Hurts, Brian Robinson, Josh Jacobs. Is this a good trade? I would say going for Mixon in this circumstance, I'd be perfectly fine with. I have no issue with that at all, considering you have Jalen Hurts and he's already passed his bye week. So, yeah, I'll take Mixon there. Thank you. ISO Flip sends in a question. Says, Wilson or Stafford rest of season? The schedule says Wilson. The offense says Stafford. Depends on how you kind of want to approach it in that regard. I would say probably roster them both. But as of this week, I know what I'm doing, which is picking up Wilson and playing him. And if he performs well, just keep riding the hot hand. Godwin sends in a follow-up, says, trade Chuba Hubbard for Tracy. I would. Yes, give me Tracy rest of season. Thank you. Moving on to a question from John War, who says, full PPR, trade Higgins for Debo. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. Again, if you can't afford to have Higgins miss this week and potentially have next week's bye week, Debo would be a great fill-in in the meanwhile. So yeah, I'll make that move. Cody Dean sends in a question. Nothing, I see it. Never mind. Cody says, full PPR, Burrow or Allen. Between the two of them, I'd rather play, Josh Allen this week. That would be the preferred. Do I think that Joe Burrow is a player that I wouldn't consider in comparison? No, they're in the same tier. In regards to today's overall video that I posted, quarterback and tight end rankings for week 11, I have them within the same tier. So technically, in terms of their overall fantasy point projection based on my projection model, they're close enough to where I could consider playing Joe Burrow over him, and I wouldn't mind that. I don't think that's a wrong answer as of right now. If Higgins plays, I'd say I'm even more confident in doing so, but until then, I'd probably just roll with Josh Allen because of the rushing upside. And in your next question, pick one, D-Hop, Tillman, or Adams. As to who I'm starting this week, the order is Adams 1, Tillman 2, and D-Hop 3. Thank you. Gio sends in a question. Gio, where art thou question, though? I don't see it in the chat. Let me see if maybe you typed it in earlier today. You did. It says, hey, Andrew, my trade went through for Mixon and Reed. Full PPR, flex Chubb, Jacobs, Reed, or Sutton. Really good question. Out of those available, let me see who I have ranked the highest. I'm going to assume that I have Courtland Sutton or Reed the highest ranked out of the group. Courtland Sutton is there. Jacobs is there. Where's Reed? Reed is there. Yeah. As of right now, Courtland Sutton is my highest ranked of the group. So he would be the number 1 option. Number 2 would be Jacobs. 3 would be Reed. And number 4 would be Chubb. So Sutton would be the play. Thank you, Gio. If you had another question, let me just see. Did you have anything else? And then it says, hey, Andrew, my trade went through. Mixon and Reed, full PPR, Chubb, Jacobs, Reed, Sutton. Starting Knicks, Henry, Mixon, Hill, Debo, Goddard, Rams, and Fairbairn. Okay, yeah, cool. Good to go. Thank you, Gio. Appreciate it. Moving on to a question from Al G, who says, someone offered me Evans and Brian Robinson for Nico. Okay. So, depends how much you need that running back. Because here's the thing. Brian Robinson has an upcoming bye week, if I'm not mistaken, in week 14. Let me just confirm this. Week 14 NFL. Let me just check the schedule. Let's see what we're looking at here. So week 14, there are 6 teams on bye. Washington is one of them. So if in fact you believe you need a running back until then to help you get to the fantasy playoffs, then sure, we would make a deal of this overall magnitude. If you think that it's just fodder and you're never going to utilize Brian Robinson, he's pretty much going to be a guy that's like just for depth, then you wouldn't make the deal. But if it's someone that is actually going to impact your roster immediately, then yes, you would make the deal. But I would assume that this is a trade for next week. If this is a trade for next week, I'm thinking you might want to hold on it just to wait and see what the overall status of Evans is. Because if you make this trade and Evans next week doesn't play, even though he's been off for 5 weeks, it could hurt you rather than help you in this long term. So I'd wait till next week before pulling the trigger on this one for the long-term effect. Thank you. Waleed sends in a question, says, I'm 3-7, 5-lock streak. Wow. 3-7 means you need to literally win out all 4 games here. So hopefully you've made some trades in order to adjust for that. 6 point per passing touchdown, 2 quarterback league. I started Jaden Daniels. Yep, Jaden Daniels is going downhill really quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Set up my lineup. Do I trade for Knicks since K1 is on bye? Team is in the chat. Yeah, you have to. You have to trade Kyler Williams. I mean, not Kyler Williams. Goodness gracious. Kyler Murray. As of right now, Waleed, you have to make trades. You need to win out. I don't know how many teams make the playoffs in your league, but I would assume you need 7 wins. If that's not the case and all 8 teams make the playoffs, I'm not making any trades. If 6 teams make the playoffs and you're in 6th place, I'm not making any trades. But in the event in which you need 6 or 7 wins to make the playoffs, you have to make that move. Absolutely. Crispy Chris says flex, JSN, Jennings, or Amari Cooper. As of right now, I'm leaning towards Jennings. Thank you. Catacomb Kid sends in a question, says Waddle, Quentin Johnston, or Pitts in the flex. I'd rather play Pitts. Thank you. Moving on to a question from Soul315, who says, where is Soul's question? Control F, Soul. Half PPR, flex Tillman or Sutton. Tight end, Hutch or Bowers? You mean Hawk, right? Not Hutch. There's no Hutch. So as of right now, Sutton over Tillman, Bowers over Hawkinson. Thank you. Moving on to Justice Reborn. Justice, where are you? Let's see here. Justice says full PPR. I need 1 wide receiver and 1 flex. I have Waddle, Williams, Pop Douglas, Judy. Also, Romeo Doubs is on the waiver, so I could drop someone for him on. Okay, got it. So of the available options that you do have, am I dropping anybody? I mean, look, at this point, yes, I would drop Pop Douglas and I would pick up Romeo Doubs. Then I would subsequently play Judy alongside of Waddle this week. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on to a question from Lilexel, who says, in a 12-team half PPR, 2 flex league, we have Burrow, Gibbs, Brown, Nico Flowers, Hunter Henry, Jennings, Hunt. My bench consists of Neighbors, McBride, Mooney, Dowdle, Judy, Estime. Got offered Reed for Jennings and got offered Reed for Jennings. Okay, you automatically take that. No questions asked. We will take Reed rest of the season. And how else would you improve the team? So yeah, first and foremost, let's take the trade. As for future trades that you could make in order to improve the team, I mean, at this point, Hunt is eventually going to disappear, so you're not going to have that at the flex, but you will get the return of Neighbors. You will get an upgraded tight end. You're not really worried about that. I mean, honestly, the way you could go about it is taking Mooney and trying to make a potential trade in order to get a better wide receiver. But in the long run, I don't think you have to make any moves. Like, I'm not stressing about it. Now, depending on what your record is, like if you're going to be in a situation where you need to win out and you have Burrow and Chase Brown on a bye week next week, then maybe we're having a conversation to where maybe we're utilizing some of this depth in order to make a trade, in order to move Chase Brown or try to pick up somebody for Joe Burrow preemptively in order to kind of compensate for the loss of him next week. So otherwise, yeah, I don't think you have to move. You have enough depth on roster to where you have a solid lineup every single week henceforth. But the only thing that I'm worried about is bye weeks with Burrow, Brown, and Nico Collins and Flowers upcoming. Actually, almost all of your team is going to hit a bye except for Gibbs, and Hunt's going to disappear. So, yeah, you want to keep Neighbors. You want to keep Mooney just in case he's going to be your flex option henceforth. But yeah, if you need to win out, the only trades you would make is moving Chase Brown in order to get a running back in return next week. Thank you. Moving on to a question that came in from, after Lelexo, we have Goku, who says PPR, traded London and Brian Robinson for Mixon and Bucky. Yeah, if you don't need the wide receiver, I have no issue with that trade at all. Well done. Thank you. Waleed says, you didn't set my lineup. I don't know who to start in the flex. Waleed, let me see where your lineup is, my man. Where is your lineup? So you have Stafford, you have Kyron, you have Bijan, you have Montgomery, you have Brian Robinson, you have Bucky, you have Rico. Okay, so I need to copy paste this because you have so many players mentioned in this that it's beginning to give me a headache. So let's break this down here. Those are your quarterbacks. So you're obviously starting Matthew Stafford this week because Kenneth Walker. Jeez. Anytime I see the word or the letter K, it's either Kyron or Kenneth that comes out of my mouth instead of Kyler. That's how brain fried I am right now. So let's see here. Okay. My question is, Wally, did you start Brian Robinson today? I'm going to assume you didn't. So in the event in which you didn't, the way that I'm going about this as of this week, let me just look at the roster. Okay. So the way that I go about this, if you're playing in a league where you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, Kyron and Bijan are your starting running backs. You're starting Garrett Wilson alongside of Tyreek Hill as your wide receivers. You're flexing Reed. In the event in which Mooney misses this week, at that point, I'm playing London instead of Hill. Thank you. Good to go. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from Juiced Prop. Says, was offered Flowers, Chubb, Kraft for Tracy in London. I have no interest in Chubb at all rest of season. Again, he's not going to get himself much receiving utilization. It's a pass-first offense. So in the event in which he maybe gets a 1-yard plunge for a touchdown, I don't really feel very confident in his long-term value. So I would keep Tracy in London for the long-term kind of value of them for rest of season. Okay, let's see here. Goku sends in a follow-up, says in a full PPR 4 and 6, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. Okay, very well. Obviously starting Josh Allen this week. Wide receivers are A.J. Brown, Neighbors, BTJ, Shakir Tillman. Okay, pretty solid. I mean, what's your... Okay, we have an interesting circumstance here. So for the context of your roster, I mean, getting Mixon and Bucky in return for the long term... I mean, again, yeah, you have A.J. Brown, Neighbors. You have Tillman, which hopefully is going to be your number 3. If not, it's going to be Shakir rest of season. Mixon, Montgomery, Chuba, Bucky. I mean, yeah, as of right now, Mixon, Montgomery, and Bucky are going to be your 1, 2, 3 going forward. Evan Ingram, Hawkinson, traded. Yeah, I don't have an issue with the trade at all. I think you're perfectly fine. Again, getting Mixon is a huge upgrade at running back, and Bucky Irving is going to be a top 12 in that fantasy playoff stretch for sure. Thank you. Kyle says, I have a 2-part question. Okay, Kyle, let me see if I can find it in the live chat. All right, Kyle, where art thou? Kyle says, I got offered Kamara. Okay. I give up Pickens and Myers. Nope, not interested. I'd rather have Pickens and Myers this season. Let me see your running backs. My running backs are Breece Hall, Jones, Kenneth Walker, and Brian Robinson. My wide receivers are Puka, London, Reed, Pickens, Myers, and Mooney. I mean, do you really need Kamara in this circumstance? Because look, the way that I see it, Puka, London, and Pickens are your 3 best wide receivers. So maybe if they want to take Reed and Myers off your hands, that's okay. I mean, looking at your running backs, Kenneth Walker, I'm indifferent about the trade overall, Kyle. I don't mind if you take it because you have so many studs across the board that I don't feel like it makes a huge difference one way or the other. My immediate thought is not to take it, but again, you have so many wide receivers that you're eligible to do so. But in the same vein, you have so many running backs that you could really just stick with what you have and be just as successful, in my opinion. But if you prefer Kamara in the long term, you can go for it. Otherwise, I don't feel very inclined to make that move unless I'm moving Reed and Myers instead of Pickens in that situation. Thank you. And then as for your next, figured I'd trade one of my current running backs for another stud wide receiver too. I mean, again, if you're going to move in which you're bringing in Kamara and then you can move another running back in order to get a wide receiver, that's fine. But in the long term, again, I'd still rather like to keep Pickens in this situation. If you can, for rest of season value, Pickens is really, really high up there on my list. Thank you. Dragon the Beast says, Dynasty, PPR, no waivers. All players picked, okay? Pick 2 out of 5 wide receivers. Christian Watson, Mike Williams, Alec Pierce, Deontay Johnson, or Jalen Tolbert. Okay. So of the group that you have mentioned here, considering Michael Pittman Jr. is most likely going to play this week, and considering it's Anthony Richardson at quarterback, I don't feel great about playing Alec Pierce. So I'm probably benching Alec Pierce. I'm definitely benching Mike Williams. So then it leaves me between those 3 options, which at this point, I'm probably still benching Deontay Johnson. I'm playing Christian Watson and Tolbert as of right now. J Bake Cakes says, JT Mostert for Mixon. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, really, I just see it as JT for Mixon because Mostert, it's just fodder at that point. So I have no issue with getting Mixon in exchange for JT rest season. Thank you. AJ Reddy sends in a question. AJ says, in a 14-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I'm 5-5. I have Kyler, Achane, Pacheco, Rico, Algier, St. Brown, Devontae, Downs, BTJ, Kincaid, Kmet, Tua. I got offered Pacheco for McBride. Oh, interesting. Do you have Hunt on your team by any chance? Let's see here. Pacheco, no, you didn't. I didn't read. Okay. Okay, interesting. My only concern, well, okay. At the moment, I think you keep what you have. Because the way I see it, for rest of season, I'd much rather have Pacheco than a little bit of an upgraded tight end. Because especially once Pacheco is fully back, he's already passed his bye week. He's already practicing this week, so I would assume he's going to be at a full capacity week 12. And by that point, he will pick up where Kareem Hunt is pretty much leaving off, being a 15 to 20 point running back. So as of right now, I would keep what you have. I don't think there's a necessity to make that swap. In order to fill in for Kincaid, might just have to go pick up Dawson Knox. Otherwise, if he's healthy, you roll him. Thank you. All right, let's see here. We scroll down here. Frosty, what do you say? Okay, Frosty's talking to somebody else. Tony Lopez in the chat says, full PPR. I traded my Lamb for Adams and Higgins. Congratulations. Well done. That's great. Zach says, someone explain why on Sleeper Hurts has 20 points and Goddard has 16. That is just, it's probably a mistake. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me because I'm pretty sure Hurts didn't even complete a passing touchdown, right? So not sure why that would be the case. As of right now, looking at the stats, Dallas Goedert has 5 catches for 61. So yeah, I would assume that it's just someone on their end definitely made a mistake there. All right, Brian D says, traded Hubbard for Jaden Reed. Congratulations, well done. My other running backs are Gibbs. Cool. Yeah, well done. Yeah, I mean, that's a great trade. Hubbard, again, going forward, is going to have a pretty tough slate of games ahead of him, which is certainly going to make him a limited option, especially with the return of Jonathan Brooks expected in week 12 and beyond. Angel Montero says, would you trade away Brian Robinson Jr. for Bucky? I would. I would rather have Bucky Irving rest of the season. Absolutely. Jake O'Connor says, in a full PPR 6-4, debating sending Russ, Kupp, Taylor for Hurts and Amari. Nope, not interested there. I'd rather have Russ, Kupp, and Taylor rest of season. Thank you. Let's see here. Raymond Brown says, AJ flopped for only 11 points. Correct. Flex Dobbins, Reed, Waddle, or BTJ. I'm flexing Reed there. Thank you. John Paxton's in a question. Says, yesterday I mentioned many trades. End of day, I traded Hall, Shakir, Coleman, Goddard for Evans, Hawkinson, Amari. Okay, interesting. Reminder, I have Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, I remember. Okay, cool. Fantastic. I mean, look, in the long term, upgrade at tight end, massive upgrade with a top 12 option, a wide receiver in the form of Mike Evans. And then, of course, Amari Cooper could even be better than we currently anticipate him being, which is a low-end kind of wide receiver 3. If he begins to kind of build momentum here in the absence of Keon Coleman and Kincaid, Amari Cooper could be very valuable for you in the long term. So, yeah, I'll take that trade. I don't have an issue with it. Well done, John Pack. Ron the Don says, Dallas Goedert just made a big play walking to the locker room. That's right. Atta baby. Yes. Listen, okay, really quickly, I wanted to make a comment about that game. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but besides the fact that the Washington Commanders were not only in field goal range at the end of that game, okay, when they were down 10-12, they decided, you know what, let's go for it on 4th down, and then they failed subsequently. Now, regardless of whether or not they fail, they should have kicked that field goal. Being up 1 point, a huge difference. Now, even though we have the other team coming down and immediately scoring, the whole momentum of the game is changed when you fail that 4th down. But when you look at the 2-minute drill at the end of that game going down the field, to close out the game, there was no, I mean, I swear, I don't know what Cliff Kingsbury's thinking. There was no sense of urgency at all from the Washington Commanders. They quite literally ran a halfback draw 5 times on that drive on a 2-minute drill. They had no interest in throwing it to the boundary and trying to kill the clock in any circumstance. The fact that they are consecutively handing the ball off on a 2-minute drill in order to go down and try to score, I mean, it's malpractice. It has to be. Someone is intentionally screwing over my 200 passing yard entry that I made on Underdog. And yes, I'm pissed off about that because I literally had Jaden Daniels going higher than 200 passing yards. He finished with 191. And instead, we're running halfback draws. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. Anyway, that's my segment. I crashed out. We're continuing. Should I play both Tillman and Njoku? I have no issue with that. Again, if they're your best available players, then you fire them up. Tommy says, pick 2 out of Dell, Jennings, and Mooney. Mooney popped up on the injury report, which kind of scares me. Again, if he plays, you'd play Mooney and Jennings. Otherwise, if he's out or potentially there's a questionable tag next to him, we'll just pivot to playing Dell at that point because, again, he still is in a difficult matchup against the Denver Broncos. Chris says, traded away Breece Hall and Njoku and got back Chase Brown, Bucky, and Ferguson. And I've got Otten. Perfect. Sounds good to me. Again, that's a pretty big upgrade at running back. And, of course, you still have Otten for rest of the season, which is well done. Peter says, I'm hoping to get Diop off of the waivers tonight. Would you start him over either Ladd, Pearsall, or Dell? I would start him over all 3 of those options. Yes. Thank you. Ryan Stevens says, hi, Andrew. Appreciate you. Should I trade CD for Neighbors? Yes, I would. If you can, you should. Should I trade Jamar Chase and Kenneth Walker for Jefferson and Kyron? Assuming you're trying to avoid Jamar Chase bye week, sure. Otherwise, I have no interest in making that move. Thank you. JH says, Tracy with no Daniel Dimes. Same value rest of season? Yes. If anything, he has more value. Let me tell you why. In the absence of Daniel Jones, there's less of a rushing threat of Daniel Jones stealing rushing touchdowns down in the red zone, which gives him more of an opportunity to continue to carry the ball in those instances. RCM says, Ricky Pearsall pick up for Deontay Johnson. Yeah, I'd rather have Ricky Pearsall as of right now. Deontay Johnson probably won't be a startable option for a couple weeks here. He's still trying to learn the offense. Jordan says, hey, Andrew, traded away Devontae Smith and DJ Moore for Mike Evans. Congratulations. Well done. Well done. Good job. Frosty says, dude, the Commanders were pretending that they had 3 minutes. Yeah, I don't know what they were doing, man. It was an absolute joke. Absolutely just crushed me. Let's see here. Ando says, in a half PPR, 2 wide receivers in a flex. Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed, Drake London, Nick Chubb. Out of those available, I probably play Reed and Puka first and foremost. Thank you. Actually, Tyreek Hill and Puka is probably the safest, but I mean, if we're trying to avoid Tyreek Hill, if he's not getting a full practice by Friday, we'll just play Reed and Puka at that point. Thank you. All right, we had a question that came in from Dragon the Beast, which was a follow-up. Says, thank you for spending your time answering all the questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, with great sincerity. Got to work on... Okay, dude. Good one. Listen. The underdog suggestions I make are 80% accurate, okay? On an individual player basis this season, 8 out of the 10 players within the higher or lower that I pick, 80% of the time, they are correct. Today, absolutely brutal. You know that one pass that that Jaden Daniels threw that I mean, the amount of passing attempts he had today that he could have potentially gotten back and easily made completions. One of them that I clearly remember, he threw it to the legs of Noah Brown, which would have been an easy 20 yards, continued the drive. But either way, that's very funny, Dragon. I appreciate it. Thank you. Jason sends in a question, says, should I trade Neighbors for Evans? I mean, if it's me, I would. Again, that's only in a situation where if, in fact, you can afford to, let's say, for example, Evans doesn't play this next week. Let's say he doesn't. If you can afford to live with that, then sure. Otherwise, if you need to have a wide receiver for next week, then you probably keep Neighbors for right now. Thank you. Chase sends in a question, says PPR, 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Okay, Chase, let's see what you have here. Pickens, Ridley, Mooney. Downs, James Cook, Pearsall, Amari Cooper. Yeah, Pickens is your wide receiver 1. As for your wide receiver 2, I'd probably go with Ridley there because, again, Mooney has popped up on the injury report. Until further notice, we'll just stick with Ridley as that wide receiver 2. And then within the flex position, we're playing James Cook. Also, I have Olave on my IR spot. Drop any one of them for Myers on the waivers. Yes, I would drop. I mean, legitimately, I'm not even joking. I would drop Pearsall right now to pick up Myers, and I would play him as your wide receiver 2 over Ridley. Thank you. KB sends in a question, says PPR rest of season, James Conner or JT? Considering Anthony Richardson is back, I'd rather have James Conner rest season, and I'm not even joking. Scoop Benson, cuff or estimate. I'd rather have the cuff, especially if you're going to make that move. Duro Modi sends in a question, says critical question. Drew, trade DK for Evans. Considering the playoff schedule, I have K9 and Jalen Hurts and Brown. Wouldn't have... Got it. So as of right now, I would take it. If it's me, I'll take Evans rest of the season. Thank you. Peter says, Underdog Freiermuth, higher than 2.5 receptions. The middle of the field is going to be wide open with the Ravens. Yeah, I mean, listen, the Ravens cannot stop opposing tight ends. Like, at all. It's not even remotely close. The only issue that has only existed in the case of Freiermuth since we have seen Russell Wilson take over as the starting quarterback is his lack of overall opportunity. Again, the last couple weeks for Freiermuth, let me see here. What's the most targets he has seen with, let's see here if I can find it. The most targets he has seen in the last 3 games. Okay, so 5, 4, and 4. So he's getting, well, no, that's not even, no. The last 3 games, 3, 2, and 3. So he's going to get himself 2 receptions, guaranteed. Now, can he get himself that 3rd reception? To be determined. Now, again, yes, they do play the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens cannot stop a soul in regards to tight ends. Last week, they gave up 11 receptions to opposing tight ends. So I'd assume he's in a pretty good shot to have himself a solid week here. So yeah, I don't mind that overall play, Peter. I think that's not a bad one at all going into this week. Let's see here. Dr. Dabs says Otten is on a bye. Laporta likely out. Who do I pick up? Henry, Taysom Hill, or Kraft? I'd rather play Kraft this week out of all 3 of those. Kraft will be number 1. Henry will be number 2. Taysom Hill would be number 3. Says I don't trust Tucker. Okay. I dropped. Okay. I have Seibert also. Yeah, Seibert probably should be dropped, but if you want to keep Seibert, you certainly can. Again, Washington has an upcoming bye, so I'd probably look to try to get another kicker in the meanwhile. Otherwise, keep John Parker Romo. But yeah, if it's me, I'm playing Kraft. If you don't trust him, play Hunter Henry. Thank you. Ed sends in a question. Says Amon-Ra for Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, I will take Bijan rest of the season. Thank you. Next question. I have Puka Wilson, or never mind. Next statement. So you have Puka Wilson. I need a decent running back. Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Let's get Bijan there. Nathan Salazar sends in a question. Says pick 2 in a full PPR. Jennings, Hill, BTJ, Dell, Myers. Out of those available, Hill and Myers are the 2 best. Thank you. Appreciate it. Lamosity says, should I really start Tillman over Ramondre Stevenson? In a full PPR, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Again, you have to understand that Ramondre plays against the Rams, and they have been really good in terms of stopping the run as of late. Caleb, and of course, look at the efficiency of Ramondre Stevenson over the course of the last month here. It has not been nice at all. John Perez in the chat says, trade Najee for Neighbors in a standard league. If you don't need the running back depth and you're okay with losing a starting running back that, again, potentially is in your rotation, yeah, I'll take Neighbors there. That's fine. Angel Montero says, can you help me with my lineup this week? We have 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 1 flex. These are the following options. So Achane obviously starts at running back alongside of JT. St. Brown starts next to Deebo Samuel, and I'm flexing Chase Brown. So Achane, JT, Brown, St. Brown, Deebo, and I'm playing Kittle over Hawkinson this week, but they are back-to-back ranked in a full PPR. Thank you. we move on to a question that comes in from Ramos, who says, questions in the chat, much appreciated. Thank you, Ramos. I see it right now. Okay. It says Josh Allen, James Cook, Kyron Williams, Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren, Jonathan Brooks, Braylon. Okay, so this is just the context of what your roster looks like across the board. Cool. So your question is, half PPR, one team wants my Allen / Waddle for his Breece Hall / McBride. Do I make this trade if I'm able to get Jordan Love for Tyrone Tracy from another team? Let me look at the entire roster here. So you'd have Jordan Love, who's past his bye week. You'd have James Cook, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall. Then at wide receiver, you'd have Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Khalil Shakir, Cedric Tillman, and then you'd have McBride. Ramos. If you can get both to occur, if you can get both overall deals to happen, then yes, we would make that move. But only if both occur, because you certainly need a reliable enough quarterback in the long term, and for sure Love can provide that to you. So yeah, if you can get both to occur, yes, let's make the move. Thank you. Damian sends in a question. It says in a PPR flex, super flex, okay, it's 4 and 6. We have Geno Barkley, David Montgomery, AJ Brown, St. Brown, Ferguson, Higgins, May. My bench consists of Levis, Audric Estime, Tillman, Pearsall, Thielen, Pacheco. Advice or trades? Okay. So here's the issue with a Superflex format. Obviously, I'm going to immediately try to say you should probably get a better quarterback than Drake May, but I'm going to try to assume that it's probably going to be impossible to make a trade for a quarterback unless they're getting a quarterback in return, and I don't think anybody in your league would be happy trading for Levis or May. So I'm going to assume that position and that overall circumstance is off the table. So in this overall situation, Barkley, Montgomery, AJ Brown, St. Brown, I have no issue with any of those options. Do I like your tight end? Absolutely not. You have Pacheco, who's eventually coming off of your waivers. Coming off of your bench and eventually will be in your flex. Either him or Higgins will be in that position. So really at this point, the only thing I'm looking towards is potentially moving Tillman and or Higgins to try to get a tight end. If it's me, I'm moving Higgins now because he has an upcoming bye. Considering your 4 and 6 record, you have to win out in order to potentially make your playoffs. So I'm probably taking Tillman and trading for a tight end. Now, the final statement you made here says trade advice. Tried Higgins or Tillman for McBride and Hawkinson and Herbert. Okay, so you tried that and it didn't work. If that didn't work, which is immediately what I was thinking about suggesting, we're screwed. Okay, so can we try it for Njoku? Can we try it for Kyle Pitts? Again, we need to upgrade that tight end a pretty big margin. If those aren't available options, then I take Pacheco and I try to go explore and see if you can get McBride, Hawkinson for that. For a team that is running back needy, or whoever in your league has, Hunt, maybe go get their tight end. That's my immediate thought process. Thank you. But yeah, you were on the right track there in terms of what you were going after and who you're going to utilize. That's exactly the same thought process I have. Momo Promo says nothing. Momo, where's your question? Momo says, how does being in a keeper league influence trade decisions? Well, it depends. How many players can you keep? And if you keep a player, where are they kept? Are they out of your draft? Like, let's say, for example, you play in a keeper league where you can keep 3 players. The first question I ask is, okay, is there a value associated with every single player correlated with the upcoming draft? And the reason why I ask that is because there are some keeper leagues in which, let's say, for example, if you drafted Christian McCaffrey in the first round, the following year, if you wanted to keep him, you'd have to keep him as a first-round selection because that's where he was picked. Now, there are leagues, for example, where let's say, for example, you drafted, I don't know, let's throw out a name, Brock Bowers. You drafted him in the 8th round. There are leagues in a keeper format in which the following year, the draft pick in comparison to where you got him the year prior, it goes up 1 round. So Brock Bowers would theoretically be he was an 8th round pick the year prior. Next year to keep him, you'd keep him as a 7th, which again you would. So in these circumstances, it depends. Now, if keepers are completely separate from the draft itself, then again, really you're just keeping these players because you're trying to prepare your team for next year's kind of approach. Just have 3 studs on roster. They're not going to be impacting your draft. You're good to go. But if they do impact your draft, typically, again, you don't want to keep a player that you can get later in your draft. Like, let's say, for example, I would have to keep, let's throw out a name here. Let's say, for example, I'd have to keep Josh Allen as a 2nd round pick next year. Not too interested in that. I'd let him go. I wouldn't keep him because I think, okay, I could probably get him next year as a 4th round pick based on how he's playing this year, right? So there are many of influences and decisions that may be made depending on how this keeper league is formatted as to what happens when you keep said player and how many players you can keep. Queso sends in a question, says, oh, okay, let me go back up here, Queso. Queso says, I have Nico coming back, okay? Who do I drop? Adams, Josh Downs. Okay, let's see. Adams, Josh Downs, JK, Evans, Tracy, Dell, Baker. I have Smitty and JD. Also have H.N., Christian McCaffrey, Kelsey. I'm confused because you said, who do I drop? Adams, Josh, or Downs? So when you put the... Who's Josh or Downs? I'm assuming it's just Josh Downs, right? And if that's the case, Josh Downs gets dropped. Let me see. Okay, so can you do me a favor? Tell me who are the names that can potentially be dropped. If it is the ones there, it's Adams, Josh Downs, J.K. Dobbins, Mike Evans, Tracy, Dell, Baker, Smitty. If those are the names, you're dropping Tank Dell. Thank you. Moving on. We had a question that came in from LDMND. Where is your question, though? LDMN. Can't find it. DMND. There it is. 12-team PPR. Trade Brees for Puka. Yes, I would. In a PPR. I have Kamara, Pacheco, Marvin Harrison, BTJ, Shakir. Yeah, again, here's the issue. If you trade away Brees Hall today, yes, you can avoid his upcoming bye week, but who's starting at running back? It's definitely not Pacheco this week. So who's your other starting running back this week? If you can survive with that one, then yes. For the long term, I'd rather have Puka. Thank you. Kamikaze sends in a question. Kamikaze, where is your question, though? Says, also any moves to make in comparison to... Okay, there it is. I see it. Says, my starting lineup is Hurts, Chase, Ladd, Stevenson, Jacobs, Goddard. Flex is Dowdle. Okay. My bench is Pearsall, Kincaid, Neighbors, Tracy. Do I play Pearsall or Dowdle in the flex? I don't know what your scoring format is. Let me see where I have them in a full PPR in comparison to one another. As of right now, I have Dowdle ahead of him in both formats. So I would keep Dowdle in that position. As for potential moves that I would make upcoming here, again, with Chase going on bye, if you're in a win-out situation, you might have to move him. Outside of that, again, Neighbors and Tracy come back next week. If you don't feel like your roster's strong enough this week, without Neighbors and Tracy, you might have to move them this week, potentially, in order to kind of secure a victory. KB sends in a question, says, start Herbert or Nix? I'd rather start Bo Nix. Thank you. Next question, London or Tillman? In a PPR, I'd rather play Tillman. If Mooney is out, I would consider playing London ahead of him, but for right now, it's Tillman. John Pack says, live chat, please. Okay. John Pack. Last trade, I'm talking to someone about Love for either Reed or Pickens or Purdy for Metcalf. Do you mind giving away any quarterback for any of these three? Thinking good for now. Should be good. Love for either Reed or Pickens. So, okay. Under the assumption that you are... Okay, so this is the way that I would go about it. If you can give away Love and get Pickens in return, I'd take it. That's what I would do. That's the way I go about it. That would be the preferred. Because you could start Purdy every week henceforth, rest of season. And then you also had a message that said Puka, which I don't even know what that is. Can you get Puka as well? If you can get Puka instead, I mean, shoot, I'd give away Purdy for Puka. That works for me, and I'd start Love the rest of the season. You know what I mean? If that is what you're asking me, confirm it. Otherwise, rewrite it, because from how I'm reading it, when you say trade Love for either Reed or Pickens, I'm assuming that's what you're giving away Love for one of those receivers. Thank you. Schnabel says PPR, Amari Cooper or D-Hop. I'd rather have D-Hop this week. Nate Nix says Puka or CeeDee Lamb this week is my wide receiver too. I'd rather have Puka, and I'd rather have Puka rest of season. Full PPR, start Brown at my wide receiver one. Got it. Yeah, Puka Nacua is your play. Queso says it was a typo. Got it. Okay, so you understand who we're dropping, right? Got it. Ratha says in a half PPR, Bo Nix or Jordan Love. I'd rather play Bo Nix this week. I have Reed too. Happy birthday. Thank you. I appreciate that. But as of right now, still, I'm going to play Bo Nix there. If you want to play Love, you can. Again, they're both top 12 ranked wide receivers. God, my brain is fried today. They're both top 12 ranked quarterbacks. Goodness gracious, my brain doesn't just function anymore. I was answering somebody else's question. Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, very well. For the Puka thing. Okay, I understand. Got it. If Higgins is active, do I start him? Yes. If Higgins is active, he's a top 23 running. Or, man. All right, what time is it, guys? We've been here for almost an hour. I think that's where we're going to call it. I can't even speak, guys. I'm going to be totally honest. My brain is so fried. Today's been a very long day. But I think that's where I'm going to call it. Again, I can't even normally talk. So I think that's where we, for my best interest and for my mental health, we'll call it there. I appreciate y'all. Thank you, everybody. We'll answer a couple more questions and hopefully I can speak when doing so. And if I can effectively get through those questions, I'll be happy. But that's what we'll call it. Okay. I appreciate y'all. Thank you. All right. Let's see here. Jay McLaughlin says, in a standard, should I trade Brees for Connor? I would. My other running backs are Achane, Tracy, Bucky. Yeah. So you'd pretty much be in full playoff ready mode, Jay. Again, under the assumption you can afford to have 3 of those running backs missing this week, so you're not going to be able to start Connor, Tracy, and Bucky, and this week is not a must-win scenario, then yes, I'd make the trade. But if it's a must-win scenario, you should probably keep Brees and play him. Sahil says, who should I trade? Chuba 4. I have Debo, Tillman, Mooney as my receivers. Look, Chuba Hubbard, you'd have to find someone that, again, well, it depends. Do you want a running back in exchange? If you want a running back in exchange, the names that I've continued to say is I want Connor, I want Tracy, and I want Bucky Irving. Those are the 3 running backs I want the rest of the way. Let's see here. JH says Kyler moves up quarterback rankings rest of the season. Correct. Might play him over JD depending on the matchups. I would play him over JD, yeah, depending on matchups for sure. But going forward, JD does not look great. Since that rib injury, it's been downhill for him, unfortunately. Ryan Stevens says, appreciate you. Thank you very much. Happy birthday. Appreciate that. Thank you. Gus says, sup, Drew. In a 12-team PPR, starting lineup consists of Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane. Wide receivers are Amon-Ra, Debo, Evans, Kelsey. Flex is Kenneth Walker. I got offered London and Downs for Pacheco and Evans. Keep the depth or upgrade a wide receiver. I mean, look, at this point, you got offered London and Downs for Pacheco and Evans. I'd rather have Pacheco and Evans rest of the season. So keep it. And as of right now, the depth you have on roster is it really is your strength. So I would keep everything just in case of an upcoming injury. Thank you. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. That's where I'm going to call it. I'm cueing the music. Have a great rest of your night. I'll be back tomorrow with Hidden Gems and, of course, live streaming tomorrow night starting at 7 p.m. Hopefully, my brain won't be as cooked as it is currently right now. Look, I'm ending the stream. I'm even throwing up the graphic before I've done even talking. That is how mentally cooked I am. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.